How's it going, OFPs? And welcome to another episode of the Off-Field Players Podcast. I'm your host, Phillip Paul, and I hope everybody's having an awesome week or having an awesome weekend, or like by the time this episode goes up, I hope you're excited for the weekend to come. And yeah, if anybody that's been living under a rock, just know that this is episode number 3 of the NASCAR Diversity Series for the Off-Field Players Podcast. And if you haven't gone and watched the first 2 episodes of the podcast series, I highly recommend that you do so before continuing with this one. But I just really excited to be able to continue the podcast series with the interns of the NASCAR Diversity Internship Program of the class of 2023. It's been really great so far. Have had a lot of great guests come on in regards to the interns, just talking about their experience working or interning for the summer with NASCAR and just everything that's been experienced so far, as this is NASCAR's 75th anniversary, which makes this NDIP class a very special class to highlight in regards to the magnitude of this season for NASCAR. But tonight I have a new batch of interns that are joining the Off Field Players podcast with me. And yeah, this is a very interesting group. Like, they're in great departments, and they've also been able to experience some of the big events that NASCAR has hosted so far this season. For example, like the Chicago Street Course race, where we'll be having an intern that's featured tonight that is actually in Chicago, who will be talking about her experience working at the NASCAR office in the Windy City. So, without further ado, I would like to have the guests on tonight's episode to introduce themselves, say your name, say where you go to school, what department you're in, and just a little bit about yourself as an individual. Go right ahead.
All right, I guess I'll start since I was nominated before this episode started. I go to Elon University. I'm a sport management major. I'm on the track team there, and I'm interning with the partnership marketing team, which is a lot of fun. I had a little bit of experience with it last summer with a team that ran limited late models, so grassroots level stuff, and I feel like that really helped me get this internship. But having a lot of fun and just figuring things out, I guess.
My name is DeNashia Robinson. I'm a rising 3 at Howard University. That's basically the last level of law school. I'm with the legal team. A little bit about myself. I'm originally from New York. And the way that I got into sports law is pretty interesting because I started in a route of like fashion law, and then I just ended up falling in love with sports law.
All right. Hi, my name is Pendleton. I went to the University of Illinois for undergrad. I currently go to the University of Central Florida for grad school. I'm getting my MBA and master's in sports business management. I'm currently in Chicago on the marketing and partnerships team.
Okay. My name is Haley King. I just graduated from Prairie A&M University with a degree in digital media arts and a minor in marketing. I'm with Worldwide Express Shipping, which is the official logistics company for NASCAR, as a brand activation intern. And I think last year working at the NFL was like really my first introduction into corporate sports, so I'm excited for the future.
Last but not least, my name is Elijah Patterson. I am a rising senior at Johnson C. Smith University. I'm studying sport management there. Currently interning in the driver and team marketing department and marketing services. And I guess my just introduction into the corporate sports industry, I started in ticket sales with the Charlotte Knights, our local minor league team, the farm team for the Chicago White Sox. So a little Chicago there. But yeah, working with them, I also did game ops with the minor league team, the Charlotte Checkers in Charlotte. So just building up my resume before I got into this position now.
You heard it already from the interns that are on the call tonight, and just a very diverse group of individuals that are working within the sport. We have people that worked on the events side, working on the logistics side, the legal side, and every aspect in regards to just being able to experience the NASCAR Diversity Internship Program and all it has to offer. And if you tuned into the first 2 episodes, we just really emphasize about the importance of being an OFP. It comes with getting the experience as early as possible. And everybody that's on the call tonight has been fortunate enough to be able to, get in with a great sports internship program like the one that NASCAR puts on every summer. And even just also the meaning and the initiative behind it, where it's the push for diversity, it's the push for experience, not just in sports, but motorsports to be specific, and just everything in regards to learning about what makes the sport of NASCAR go round, and just using those skills to either take it back with them when they return to school or moving on to their next part of their career as an off-field player. So just talking about our departments and our backgrounds and where we go to school, it really, like, one thing that I like to do with the guests I bring on is just to learn a little bit more about themselves when it comes to, how they were able to get their start in the sport. So if everybody could just go around and answer this question for me, what, like, describe your first introduction to the sports industry when you were young, or actually, not, excuse me, not just in sports, but just like in sports, like whether that was a sport you played, a sport you grew up watching, a sport that you were introduced to by your parents or your siblings, or a sport that you just, enjoy to follow, either statistically or just by the highlights.
So my whole family were into sports. We play a lot of sports. Grew up playing multiple sports year round. Like, they just told us we had to do something. They didn't really care what it was, but it just ended up being sports. And in high school, played 4 sports. Had some fun with that, and took up a lot of time. But it's definitely one of my passions. And just like competing is just one of my favorite things, and just really just being a part of the competition. Like, I don't even have to be in it, but just like being around people competing is it's almost like gas. Like, it lights a fire and just like keeps it going. So yeah, just being a part of sports and just playing sports has been really important to me. And watching my brothers play football, me playing football, soccer, and then now I'm on the track team at Elon. So it's just been a lot of fun.
I would say for me, my family's kind of really sport oriented. I grew up playing like a couple of sports, so track and swimming were the main ones for me. I ended up running track in college at the University of Illinois. Sorry, I almost said UCF. And then so from there, I was also really involved just on like the organization side. So I learned a lot about like how the business was run, and like just like the different ways that collegiate sports is different, or Division 1, 2, and 3. So learning that, I ended up starting like a organization at my university as well. So that was my start.
My dad is an avid Cowboys fan here in Dallas, and the game was always on. So I've always been a fan of football per se. And then I played soccer when I was younger, so I kind of got into sports as well. But that's my biggest influence would be like running flags for the football team at PV, and being on the field, and kind of like not like a jockey or like a mascot or something like that, but just a spirit go getter, I would say. And so that's where I feel like a lot of my love for being in the sport and the excitement that Lauryn described came from.
The Cowboys. That's horrible.
I am not a fan. I'm a
gagged a little bit when I
hater.
heard Cowboys. Just, I guess I'll go next. The first sport that was introduced to me.
That's funny because my dad's a major Cowboys fan. So
see, I can't get with it. I can't get with
A little
Cowboys.
smack talk going. That's new.
No.
I mean, I'm a neutral party. I don't really support his fetish, but it is what it is. But growing up, I guess it's controversial to say that dance is a sport. I don't know. Some people believe it, some people don't. So that's what I started off doing first. But then I ended up switching to softball as a kid, and I played all the way up into high school. So from elementary to high school, I played that. So that was like my first introduction to sports. I'm like one of the few Black women that like baseball.
You're not the only one. I love baseball.
Okay, well, I'll go. My first introduction to sports was boxing. I never boxed, but boxing was the first sport that I remember watching vividly. Don't know why. Just I think it was one of those pay-per-view fights back in like '03, '04. So boxing was the first sport I watched, but football was the first sport I played. So football was always kind of my first love. Played all throughout middle school, high school, didn't play in college, decided, wanted to focus on the school and education aspect of my life and trying to advance myself in, my career path. And it took me a while to kind of figure out what I wanted to do, but I knew sports. I just wanted to stay around it. Like, again, Lauryn said, that fire, just being around that competitive nature, it does something that, you always just want to be around it. So, like I said, working with the Knights and the Checkers, getting that kind of corporate taste of sports, that was just like, well, I guess I'll, just keep going from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's all great answers and a very diverse, like, picking of sports growing up. And I know for me, let's talk about a little bit about my introduction to sports. I knew I'm the first, well, from sports that I watched growing up, it was NASCAR. A dead giveaway, just knowing my passion for the sport and being here. But yeah, I started watching it when I was 3, and then of course I had that passion for cars all together. But when you combine it with motorsports, it gives me, it gives me the initiative to tell people that I will watch anything with 4 wheels and a motor, practically. Starting from NASCAR, and then like watching IndyCar, Formula One, IMSA, World of Outlaws, you name it. Again, anything with 4 wheels and a motor. But as far as organized sports growing up, the first sport that I was introduced to was track and field. My mom actually coached my elementary school track team back in the day. But right around the time when I turned 6, I was thinking, well, I want to try something a little bit different. So like baseball was another sport I had a strong interest in, and that was pretty much the sport that I carried on playing all the way through high school. As I mentioned before, I was a failed walk-on for the St. John's baseball team, but look where I'm at now. It all worked out. So, but but yeah, and then just like being pretty much a fan of anything as sports related growing up, and knowing that I wanted to go to school to study sport management, because not only did I have an interest, as an athlete of trying to play Division 1 sports, preferably baseball, I also wanted to make sure that I was in a position to where if things didn't work out for me trying to make it to the major leagues for baseball, which obviously never happened, I still wanted to make sure that I understood the business side of sports from a business perspective, which, interests me to go to St. John's, study sport management because of their, well-known sport management program there. And, just being in a city like New York, where, all the sports leagues, they have a bunch of different teams in every major professional sports league there. And just being in that consortia of sports, of a sports filled atmosphere, I feel like that's what garnered my interest to still want to be able to continue to find ways to keep myself involved. And the one thing that we highlight a lot is just, the upbringing of, different athletes, like what's been said, we're featuring Division 1 athletes on this podcast. And, with, people like Lauryn, people like Gift, being able to, step away from the academic side and the college sports side to be able to take the summer and intern in the sports industry, that definitely shows a lot of, like just balance and, proactivity that, they have as people, as individuals. So just moving forward and just hearing about the different upbringings of sports that's been mentioned so far, what would you say is the experience that you had, whether that was in high school or college, that led you to want to work in sports, like the sports industry specifically?
Somebody else can go first.
I can
I'll go.
go.
You got it, Gift. You got it.
Okay. For me, I think high school really made me passionate about my sport or track and field and like what was possible. But I think when I got to college, I realized just the different knowledge gaps that there were in college athletics. And I think for me, I wanted to be a part of that change. And so when I realized, like, I believe it's only like 6%. It's a very small number of, athletes have full ride scholarships. So like majority of my track team were technically considered walk-ons because of the fact that they didn't have money. Even though you're technically recruited, you're like told stuff like during interview process and recruiting phase, but you're not necessarily guaranteed things. Things change all the time, So I think just being a part of that process and seeing how much things could change, scholarships were no longer guaranteed. I wanted to be a part of a positive change.
I'll go next. We good? Yeah.
Yeah, go.
Don't be afraid to
Yeah.
speak up
Yeah.
now. It's the open
All right.
open floor.
All right. I'll say my eye opener into knowing that, you kind of that realization that you're not going pro, but you want to stick around sports. Um, I had suffered a knee injury playing basketball my sophomore year, and it wasn't like a torn ACL, but I had dislocated my kneecap and fractured my tibia, tuberosity is what they would call it. But it was like a freak accident. If I was more developed in my, 15 at the time, so I wasn't fully developed as a kid or man, obviously. Um, that happened, and I just kind of realized like I'm gonna have, like you said, Phil, like I'm gonna need a plan. I want to stick around sports, but I'm gonna need a plan of how I'm gonna act upon that. So just coming to that realization early on and knowing that if sports isn't going, or being professional isn't, or even a college isn't an option, at least I'll have different ways or avenues to go about it sticking around.
I'm not very athletic. Like I do it recreationally, but I've never been like super great at it. I don't have very good hand-eye coordination, but I like designing and I like the idea of creating designs that are athletic, sport related. And I kind of got into the NFL thing on a whim. Like I didn't believe that I was going to get that internship, and when I did, it kind of just reassured me that that was a place I needed to be. And so I would rather spend my time in the field as a partner or as a like off-field player than just completely neglect something that I like to be in and be around and be a part of.
Yeah, so for me, like I always knew like sports will never last forever. Like my parents always instilled that in us. Like the sports and your extracurriculars, like that may not last forever. Like education and learning will forever be yours. Um, and so like we had emphasis on sports, but we also were like, it's gonna be over sometime. Like it might be high school, it might be middle school, it might be at the end of your college career. But like knowing that, like my parents told, like made us, you just can't bank on it. Even if you make it to the league, like you something might happen and it's over for you. So like knowing that and having that in the back of my head, like I just was like, how do I do this? How do I stay in it? And then my brother, he works at Nike now, but he's an engineer. And like I never really thought about like, oh, working at like a big brand. Like you never really think about, oh, like there's people behind NASCAR that make it run. Like there's people behind Nike. There's people behind all of these entities that make the sport run, the sport that we love run. And like there's so many ways to be a part of it. So once I did my little tour, I did official visit to Elon. I saw they had a sport management degree, and I was like, whoa, like this is actually pretty sick. Like I could definitely do this. Whenever I was originally just gonna like do business or whatever, and just be like, this kind of sucks, but found that degree and was like, let's just rock with this, and I can work almost anywhere. Sport management doesn't put you in a box. As long as you got experience in it and your 4-year degree, you can kind of go do it, you know? So that's what I like about it. And that's just kind of what made me stay or realize like that I can be in sports and work in sports for the rest of my life.
I guess it's kind of a long answer, but not really. I feel like going to law school made me realize how much I don't want to be like a traditional lawyer. I feel like a lot of us have a conception of like, oh, we're going to go to law school and save the world. Like, we're going to be defense attorneys. We're going to, take down all the evil people in the world and be judges and save all the world. But realistically, that just doesn't match my personality. Like, I feel like I've always been a creative, and I knew that. So going into school in like a highly professional career, like I just couldn't compromise that aspect of myself. And so while at Howard, like I reinstated the Fashion Law Society, but then I also realized like how much sports played a big role in my life, and just combining two industries in general, I really, found my niche sector of the law while combining, the book side of it with the creative.
Absolutely. We're on the money side of sports, like this is where the money's at. Like you can make millions, but
for sure,
but that's where it's at. Yeah.
Yeah, and and DeNashia does definitely bring up a good point because and what I learned, or what I'm learning more as I talk with more people that work within the industry, they didn't exactly go to school for like a sports specific major. I've met people that went to law school that just kind of found a way in working with a sports team, but didn't necessarily start their career that way. Or somebody that worked in the fashion industry or like entertainment, but kind of just had a career change and maybe saw a position open for a team or a sports organization or an agency, and was probably like, hey, let me go do that and see how I feel about it. But and I think that's one thing that I think can be emphasized more, is that to be able to work in the sports industry, you don't exactly have to have a sports background or be interested in like, or they have to be a fan of the sport or anything like that, or like have to keep up with the players, the stats, or like do what a traditional sports enthusiast would do to find their way into the industry. There's just some people in it just to have a job. And and like those are the same kind of people that we have to have respect for, because they not only are they doing a service for like their organization, they're just also just trying to make something of their career, but are still trying to find their way in. I know, just being around the office, I was actually talking with one of the young ladies that works in the NASCAR Foundation the other day, and she told me that this was her first ever experience like working in the sports field, because like she has experience in the nonprofit field, but this is like her first foray into like a sports specific nonprofit. She doesn't have like any like really background where she came from a team or another sports organization. It was just, there was the job that was open and she just went for it. And I think that really shows a lot of just the diverse field that there is, or the diverse mindset that a lot of people that, the OFPs will come across to work for in the future if they do decide to pursue that route. And yeah, and like I think that's really, one thing that we should be able to emphasize a lot more, is that you don't have to be a sports fanatic, you don't have to be, like a diehard fan or anything like that. Like, if you're just in it for the job, then that's okay. I mean, yeah, just no pressure, no, like try to push you like, oh, why aren't you a fan? Or like, oh, why don't you get with those players? Like, why don't you do that stuff? Like, that's something that we shouldn't be forcing on people if they just don't have an interest. They're just probably here for the job. That's perfectly fine. And as just to keep going a little bit further, and the one thing that I've questioned the interns a lot in regards to what's been talked about in the first few episodes is the idea of mentorship. So I'm sure that everybody on the call at some point in their life has had some form of mentorship or counseling, whether that was from like a coach, a school counselor, an academic advisor, career advisor at your schools, or something like that, or maybe even like a parent or a clergy went to ask for advice, whether that was life or career, school, whatever. So the one question that I want to ask everybody, and everybody could go around and share, what mentorship did you receive at a young age coming up, or where were you able to find that mentorship out of the people that you connected
I can start. So my junior year of college, I was a part of, it was a joint program between NBC and the Women's Sports Foundation. And it's actually this mentorship program that they have for female student athletes. So if you guys join college, I would check that out. But it's basically, I was paired with a mentor that worked for NBC, and she was working in the sports industry already. And she was like basically telling me like a lot of different things. And so, at the time, I didn't necessarily know if I wanted to work in sports or like what I wanted to do next, but I knew I wanted to do like something kind of like DeNashia said, on the creative side, like in marketing or like, just storytelling. And she worked in content integration. So she was just uh, telling me like just the importance of like pivoting and starting early. I think that was a big thing. And just the fact that like, yeah, we have time, but it's also important to just, utilize the time that we currently have to our advantage.
I
I guess. Go ahead. You got it, Haley.
Okay. I never really had like a mentor per se until kind of around my senior year of college as well. My professor, the way my class schedule was built, we had the same professor all day, every day. So we kind of got really, really close, especially when I started working for her in our student lab. So, and she isn't into sports or anything like that, but she's such an advocate on us doing what we are best at, whether that be like some form of design or even not at all. But I learned a lot under her in terms of like her being personable and dealing with people like internally or when you're working with a business. And I think that pushed me further into some of these jobs and some of these applications opportunities than my skill, I could say, because people like when you can run a business, they like when you can be personable, they like when you're accountable and that you can be easily taught.
Absolutely. I had the same kind of thing. Like my professors were my mentors. And like we have really small class sizes at Elon. Like all of the classes are capped at 33. So we got to know our professors very quick and very early, which was super nice. Um, just like a shout out to all of them. Like, thank you for all your help. But I think one of the main things that they taught me was to like get out of your shell and don't like use the connections that you have. Like it feels weird to be like, hey, like do you have something available or like whatever, but like use those connections because you never know like how that probably can help you get a job. Like if you know somebody in that industry or at NASCAR car, at Nike or whatever wherever place you want to go, if you know somebody there, like even if they're not in that specific job that you're doing, but you know somebody there, they can probably vouch for you and be like, hey, like this is a really good candidate. Give them a chance. That might help you get that first interview that you need just to like break through that little like the glass like ceiling, like something stopping you, and all you need is just one interview and you should be good. But like making sure that you're using those connections that you have, because I'm always like reluctant to use those. You know, it feels weird, it feels like you're cheating, but you know, it's just who you know. Honestly, it's who you know, and you got to use those connections that you have.
So I recently transferred from East Carolina University, took a year off during when COVID first happened, and was looking for that next step and if how I want to finish accomplishing getting my degree. And so I decided between the few schools I was looking at, so mainly HBCUs. I found Johnson C. Smith. It was, right in my backyard, familiar with the city, and they had sport management, which I was looking for. Um, and the one professor, I've had some good professors since I've been there, since I've transferred, but the one that's kind of stuck with me since I've gotten there was he was the first person I saw on campus during my orientation, Dr. Lindsay. He like how you said, Lauren, it's hard to kind of get out your shell and go out and be an extrovert and putting yourself out there, especially when you're in a new environment, a new place. So he poked at me early on, trying to get a reaction out of me, just to get me out my shell, get me out of that uncomfort zone that I was in. And not only has, you know, as time has gone on and our relationship has developed and gotten better, he's presented me with so many opportunities that I don't know if I would have found if I was still at East Carolina. And not to, put one university down over another. It's just like you said, the class sizes are way smaller, so it's a lot more of an intimate setting where you can really lock in with your professors and really get to know each other. And he's somebody who takes everything very seriously. He's not going to mess with you if you're BSing. Hey, I need you to pick it up a little bit. I need you to get on your time. But like this NASCAR internship, the few other opportunities that I've had, I wouldn't have had without Dr. Lindsay. So I just, a little shout out to him as a mentor of mine.
I think for me, I don't want to lie and say I didn't really experience mentorship until I got to college, but I would say like my first impactful moment with mentors was me enrolling to HBCU and going to Hampton. And I feel like just my experience, specifically with my writing teachers, like knowing that I could text them right now, like one just like my Instagram picture last week, and um, just know that I still have that close personal connection with them, even though I haven't seen them since 2016. I think that was like my first experience, just really having people outside my family root for me and like encourage my career goals. But I would say even more so now at Howard, I feel like the alumni connection at Howard is insane. Like no matter where you're at, no matter what room you're in, you're gonna find somebody else from Howard, whether they went for undergrad, grad school, whether they live near Howard, like you're gonna find that. So I feel like I have made a mentor of like almost every teacher at my school right now. Specifically Alice Thomas, that was my contracts teacher, my tax teacher. She's literally the one that's paved the way for me here. Um, so yeah, definitely everybody at Howard.
Right, yeah. Yeah, just hearing everybody talk about their experience with, different mentors. And, I feel like when it comes to having a mentor, this is not a one size fits all thing. Mentors come in all different shapes and sizes and have different backstories. And I think when, I think about the mentors that I had coming up, I had a variety of people that were in my corner. And, I'll even shout out a few of them, like Taj Shambe. Uh, Taj was, I guess, the first true mentor that I can say that I had when it came to trying to get into the sports industry. He formerly was the VP of Government and Public Affairs for the Oakland Athletics, And he's also an Oakland, California native himself. And I remember like when the first like on the first encounter they had with him, just going to the A's headquarters, going into his office, and just having a one-on-one conversation with him, and just expressing my interest to want to work in the sports industry. He really caught on to that, and then it carried on over to people that I consider my mentors and just my personal life, as far as like on the clergy side. My pastor back home, Dr. Lawrence Van Hook, he was like my spiritual mentor, where he gave me just the mentorship that I needed to process like my Christian beliefs and everything like that, when it came to how to be a faithful person, and just having like a strong belief for something that I believed in. And of course, like on the sports side, I've had coaches growing up. Eric Clayton, I'll say, is a mentor of mine, as well as a few other coaches that I've had in the past. And I feel like it's very important that people like within our age demographic and our generation, that they find some form of mentorship, whether that's in like a teacher at school, a counselor, like somebody in the community, just someone that you can go to that can give you that advice to be able to achieve your career goals, or also achieve your academic goals or sports goals, like whatever like kind of goal you have for yourself. Just being able to have someone that's lived it, or someone that can pass on the leadership that they were able to possess like when they were coming up. I feel like that's very important. And there's a saying that I have when it comes to like respecting the idea of mentorship, is that in order to become a master, you have to learn from a master. And when you have like somebody that you see that's a master of something, I'm not talking about like MBA or like master's degree or nothing like that. I mean like someone that has mastered their craft and what they do as a career, and be able to see that and be able to catch on, to latch on with that. I think that's very important. It's something that is very necessary, especially for our generation.
Yeah. Also feel like the mentorship like aspect, like that's just like a part of that the community that you build, and like you have your mentors, but like that's like a little another section of your community, and having a community is so important just overall for your mental health and just everything really. I feel like that community is super important.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, mentorship is one very important aspect when it comes to becoming an OFP, or, even, just someone that's like trying to work in a particular industry. I feel like it's not just sports industry professionals need mentors. I feel like every industry needs a mentor in some form. But in regards to just the job climate that we're in, and also, understanding the job climate that's currently happening within the sports industry, where it's probably been as competitive than ever before to find a job working with a sports organization or a sports team these days. So, what would you say are the most challenging things for someone who wants to work in the sports industry currently?
I can go first. I would say just one thing that I've noticed is sports naturally are very competitive. And I think that because, that's the nature of the sports themselves, they also want those same characteristics in their employees. So I think naturally everyone has different personalities. So that can sometimes be a barrier to entry because of the fact that so many people are applying for, just a few amount of roles. But also I think in terms of what is required of you versus the pay, I think that can also be challenging considering, we do have to live, but it's challenging when you're starting off and you're trying to get experience, but in order to increase your pay, you also need more experience. So it's like trying to work with what you have, but those are two of the main things I would say.
I'll probably say I have two things. I'll probably say like availability. It's hard to get into something that you have never been before, or like switch jobs, something like that, because one, nobody ever quits working in the sports industry for long periods of time, and then two, a lot of them don't hire during season. My bad. During season, they hire off season, so they already have that personnel there, and they don't have to make such drastic changes or go through so many people's hands. But I will also say it's kind of just how you present yourself. Like you can like sports and be into sports, but if you're not like outgoing, kind of like what Gift said about being competitive, then you won't really stand a chance. But that's have been my experience in this. I can't really say for everybody else, but I'm also pretty shy, and that's been one thing I've been working on is like getting out of that comfort zone and being like more open and like willing to like start those new conversations rather than somebody come to me with it. So I think that's another thing that you have to like be comfortable with when you decide that you want to get into the sports industry.
I would say the sacrifices that you have to make, just sum it all up. So if you're not a morning person, but you're required to be at work early, if you want that job, if you want that position, you need to sacrifice that. And that was kind of my biggest hurdle, I think, being a night owl, staying up all type late hours of the night, but then trying to wake up, turn around in a few hours, wake up, and it's not conducive to trying to better yourself. So making those sacrifices, not staying up late, not going out too late, or working is another one I've kind of figured out working these few jobs I have. You might have a sport in mind that you want to work in, but there might not be a spot for you. So you got to pivot. And if you want to stay in sports and you might have to work in a sport that you're not familiar with or you might not like. If you want that position and you want to get to where you want to get to, sacrifice. You have to work in those spaces, in those jobs, and in those sports that you might not be acclimated to. But I mean, like I said, if you want to get to that next point, you got to sacrifice. So that's what I got.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it's like just getting that foot in the door, honestly, like, and just like showing that you're motivated to be there. And yeah, I mean, Elijah said it best. Like, you got to sacrifice to be in sports. Like last summer, I had an unpaid internship, and like that was rough because I was doing that internship, and then I was also working a job, and I was also training for track. So my summer was hell, honestly. It was terrible, but that led me to this internship, and hopefully that's going to lead me to job somewhere, maybe at NASCAR or maybe somewhere else. But you stack up little things on top of each other, it's eventually going to turn into a big thing. And also, I think another thing that's hard is whenever you are working in sports at a low level and even a high level, like most of these events are taking place like during the weekends, so your weekends are kind of shot, or like just like the little things. Oh, I can't go to dinner because we're preparing for, we'll just say, a big event like the Chicago Street Race, where Gift had to pull like 10-hour days or something like that you were talking about earlier. So that kind of thing, and maybe you're not getting paid enough or whatever, but it's been fun to be a part of.
I feel like there's a lot I can say. Speaking from like the legal side, I feel like going into school, people don't realize like what a sports attorney is because it's such an umbrella term. Like you could be working with NIL deals, you could do criminal cases, you could be working on trademarks for the actual league. You could be athletes like tax attorney. So there's so many like different areas that you could actually fall into sports. And I feel like, at least from my experience, nobody really tells you these things until you actually go out and do the work yourself. And so that's something that I definitely had to experience on my own, because like coming in as a first year, like, oh, I want to be a sports attorney. And then you have somebody actually, okay, in what area? There's always like some type of higher level specialty that you need to have. Like, I think with sports, unless you're trying to be like an attorney / agent, you need to specialize in whatever area you want to be in instead of trying to be a jack of all trades. And then more than just that, I feel like it's kind of oversaturated a little bit in certain leagues more than others. And of course, just like any other sports related job, it's hard to get into. So, and I think lastly, like more specific to like law school, like typically like as a sports attorney, they're not trying to hire fresh graduates. They prefer you to go work for a law firm, go work for a government entity for a few years, and then come back to whatever sports league that you're trying to have. So like, for example, me as somebody that just finished their second year going to their third year, I already have to have like the set expectation of like, I may not be, actually, I'm not going to speak negatively on that, but I like most have to accept the reality that like, oh, once I graduate, it's likely that I will not be in sports, as soon as I pass the bar exam. So I think that's probably like one of the harshest realities from the legal aspect.
Yeah, and everybody gave great answers when it came to that because and I think it's important that we bring stuff up like that because we understand like how demanding it is. We understand that everybody wants to be where we are, and if we go back and look at what the application pool was to just be in the NASCAR Diversity Program itself, like Julia gave us the stats, it was like over 1,600 applicants, and just knowing that we were like the best out of 1,600. There's 37 of us in the program, and knowing that we beat out everybody else like that applied for it, like we should be less than grateful that we even made it in because we understand like what it took to go through the interviews, fill out the applications, provide a portfolio if that was necessary to do just to make it in because we understand that we have to set, like as individuals, we have to set a high bar for ourselves to be able to get through those interviews. And I think one thing that I really emphasize a lot to the OFPs is that when it comes to trying to work in sports, you're going to have to get used to rejection. It's almost kind of like, dating. It's like you're not gonna get the guy like or get the guys you want to be with. Like they might not like you back, but you just gotta move on to the next one. Or, to speak on behalf of the men, like, you could like it's not like, you could go out, ask out like that girl you like, and she's gonna like you're gonna expect her to say yes. I mean, it doesn't always work like that. And but I feel like that's the one thing that comes with the territory of trying to go and apply for different teams. And I know one thing that is emphasized a lot by career advisors or HR managers and recruiters is that don't put all your eggs in one basket because it's most of the time it's never going to work out. And you also have to I'm not saying like dream small or anything, but also be realistic about the options that you have at your disposal. It could be like say for example, like if you're someone that's fresh out of college and is trying to look for a job in sports, like don't expect to go work for a team like the Yankees or go, work for a team like the Cowboys or like the Lakers or, somebody or like an organization that has a big name behind them and with a lot of branding, a lot of resources and, a lot of prestige like in the sports world overall, like globally. Sometimes it's always great to start out with a minor league team or like with a G League team or, or at the college level with a college team. And because those opportunities is what's going to open the door for you. And I want to go back to what a professor of mine said to me is that one thing that comes with working in the sports industry is to be able to adapt to new environments. And this could be say if you grew up in like a big city, maybe that first job that you have in the sports industry will probably be in some rural town in the Midwest or something with a minor league team or with a college with like a Division III college team. But the best thing about taking on those opportunities is that you at least have your foot in the door to where you already accomplished the hardest thing to do as an aspiring sports industry professional, getting your first job in sports. That's the hardest thing that everybody has to go through when they're first starting out, which explains why having good mentors is important, why being adaptable is important, why accepting rejection, being common is important, and it's just like the Wolf's Law of accepting pain early on, but can still use it to your advantage later on, like in your career. So, and I feel like this is asking a question about the challenges of trying to work in the sports industry is a good segue to the next question that I have for everybody in regards to how do you separate yourself? So for everybody, like what are ways that you personally have separated yourself from the competition for, say, the internships you apply to, the academic programs that you're in, or even just the jobs that you worked in or applied for?
I'm gonna go ahead and say experience. Experience in the field would get you a long way. If that resume is built up with experience, I think that helps separate yourself. And also, if you're leaving an impact at that workplace that you're in, they could put in a good word for you, and that again will also take you somewhere. So, like I said, experience and just leaving your mark in a positive light.
I think also a lot of people overlook getting jobs at your university. Like you have a whole athletic department. Like, go get a job there. They're always looking for people to work, and usually it's pretty flexible too. Like my freshman year, I got a job in game operations with Elon Athletics. Like, as an athlete, like they knew like I couldn't work during my track season, but they were flexible with it. So I have 4 years of experience working in sports already. Like, maybe it's like not like a high level job, but I was still facilitating a lot of things and training people and doing a lot of stuff that way. And so just like don't stick your nose up to things, especially whenever it's pretty convenient, like working at your university. That's such an important thing. I think all sport management majors should be working at their athletic department at the university if they have it. There's no reason why you shouldn't.
Yeah, I agree with both those points, especially about the having experience on your side. Even if it isn't in sports, it should be whatever you're applying for. Because, like we said earlier, you don't necessarily have to be like a diehard fan, but you should obviously know what you're getting yourself into, and they should be able to tell that from your resume, your portfolio, or whatever the case is. But I also think the way you speak and using those key target words is also where like employers and even people that look at your resume want to see and hear. Those are the things that stand out the most. So I think if you're saying those like keywords, you're already one step ahead of somebody else who didn't. And then also when you having those interviews and you're talking to these people is to like treat it as a conversation rather than an interview, or even um like even knowing what kind of sport that you're getting into. Like they always ask, oh, like why do you like so and so and so and so? Like have a story behind that. Like my story for NASCAR was the fact that like me and my grandpa and my granddad watching it before he died. So like that was how I got into it. That's just like a story to have, something to relate, you know?
I would say for me, some things that I like to do are just one, research beforehand. So if I can research who's going to be on the panel, who's I'm going to be interviewing with, but also about that industry or that specific job, and just come with like some unique questions that they probably don't get a lot. Like I know for this position, I was kind of, because I'm from Chicago, I had like specific questions about, how was it going to basically impact the city and like, the different organizations that are often overlooked. So I think just trying to go in and just be yourself, but also, yeah, making sure that you're hitting the target points, or like Haley said, coming with like key statements that you're saying that kind of go with the role.
I would say one way that I started sticking out is like Phil mentioned, I got accustomed to rejection. So because of that, I started taking paths less chosen. And in fact, I started making like my own paths in general. I feel like, especially like with sports, like it's attractive, it's sexy. Like everybody wants to say that they work for a sports team or they work for a sports league, but you actually have to do very tedious and hard work to get there. Like for example, right now I'm working 80 hours a week. It sounds really bad, but it's not like physically that terrible. Like I still go to sleep on time and stuff like that.
Sacrifices.
But I just made my resume attractive. Like any opportunity that I thought would help me leverage as a sports attorney, I did it. Like for example, I interned at the IRS because I know a lot of what comes with player representations is their finances. So instead of hiring them getting a, accountant, they have me because I understand finance and I understand contracts. So like just picking at little skills that you feel like, would highlight you as whatever sports related job that you're trying to get. Just whatever you can to make that better. Hone in on whatever skill you feel like you're good at.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about my upbringing, and I'll say, I've been blessed to have four great, internships specifically in sports. First one being after sophomore year of college, being with 2311 Racing, and the following year being able to do two internships in one summer, like being, of course, with me mentioning that I'm like the only returning, intern in the Diversity Internship Program. Last summer when I was at Sonoma Raceway back in my home area, like in Bay Area, California, just being able to have that experience, and also coinciding that experience with interning with the Oakland A's baseball team, and just knowing like having the feeling of being back home where I could get experience in two different places. It's like had like two. It was cool to say, I got two paychecks from two different teams, and it's like wow. But I understood the just what I had to do to make sure that I was presentable and I was prepared to be able to interview for these roles and to also be able to adjust and adapt and take up as much of the opportunity that I had for myself, just knowing that, man, there could be thousands of people that could be in my shoes right now or that could be working the job that I'm currently. But knowing that I made the effort to connect with the right people, stay in touch with, past supervisors, also, getting the help from my mentors, I think that's what separated me from, the competition in regards to just knowing that as long as I presented myself, as long as I kept it real, stayed genuine, people are going to accept me and are going to want to hire me. And the one thing that I think is very important for people to understand when it comes to trying to work in sports or really work in any industry at all is that you have to be a people person. Because I feel like, nowadays, and like, we can admit that some of us do get an ego at some times with, thinking how cool we are, like how, overly confident that we believe our skills are. But when it comes down to it, like with understanding that you're going to get a lot of rejections and maybe not want to work for the team that you dreamed about working for, there's a lot of humility that comes with that. And as long as you stay humble to others and within yourself, I think that helps you go very far when it comes to how you progress at a sports organization when you do eventually land that first or that second sports industry job or just or that first or second job in general. Because, like when you're a people person, like you have good social skills, you have respect for others, you have respect for yourself, and you also just are good at storytelling as well. And I know I've mentioned this before in the previous episodes that one of the events that I had when I was doing broadcasting for St. John's basketball as a student for the student radio station WSG Radio, there was one time where I was broadcasting a game at Madison Square Garden, and I remember when I was walking into the arena that day. I think we were playing UConn, and I met up with Gus Johnson. And for those that know who Gus Johnson is, he's done broadcasting for NFL on Fox, or NFL on Fox, or college basketball, like specifically Big East basketball, or like Fox College hoops. So he's done the NBA. Who else? He's done like no, he's done college football. And I remember I went up to him when he called the St. John's game that day, and because he was one of my broadcasting idols growing up. He's a guy that I integrated my broadcasting style from, or like emulate my broadcasting style from, because I like the way that he used the catchphrases. I like the way that he storytelled. And and one piece of advice that he gave to me when I went up to him was be good at being a good storyteller. And even earlier today, I think I heard somebody mention the importance of being a good storyteller earlier, just on a call that I came across. And I feel like that's a huge skill to have, especially when you're going through the interview process. That if you could tell a good story about the previous place you worked for, the experiences that you've had, whether that was from a previous job or when you're in school, I think people will respect you and will see the passion that you have for what you want to do in regards to a career. So definitely, keep up with that. It was just trying to understand in regards to working in the sports. Like, yeah, it's cool, or like the said, like, maybe people just want to do it because it sounds sexy, or to say you work for such and such sports team or a sports organization. But at the same time, always make sure to embrace the experience that you have, whether it's big, small, medium size. Just do everything you can to be able to humble yourself in that regard. So just continuing on with that and just understanding that the pool is so big when it comes to working in the sports industry, how do we encourage our generation and the next generation behind us of sports industry professionals to garner an interest in wanting to work in the industry without being discouraged by the hoops that they may have to jump through?
I would say one thing that I would say is just it's important for us to continue having conversations like this because it opens it just lets people know what's possible, but it also lets you know like a baseline. But I also think the more we have these conversations, the more we can kind of over time just make it a more positive narrative, and we can have a more positive change. And so I think like the things that we go through, you know, hopefully in the future other people won't have to go through, because I feel like over time, you know, we progress as a society. So I think from that perspective, it can kind of like show people what's possible. But also like regardless of the industry that you're in, there are going to be challenges that you're going to face, right? As a person of color, as a woman, you know, whatever. So I think because of that, we have to be mindful of that too. So I think if you find that it's something that you think is beneficial for you and you would really like to do it, I think that you should definitely go for it.
I think also understanding that like it's okay to go work somewhere else first. Like even if it's not in sports, like I don't like sales at all. Like I don't like doing sales, but you can find a job in sales in sports. You can find a job in sales in almost anything. And if you have that sales experience, you learn a ton. You learn a lot. So like don't stick your nose up to some of those things that you may or may not want to do. And just put your nose to the grindstone and get it going. Like again, those he's talking about the minor league teams, like they're always hiring there. Like it's gonna be tough, but you're gonna learn a ton. Like one of my mentors / people I worked for at Elon University, she worked in minor league baseball for so long, and then her experience helped her a lot because whenever they changed the rule in North Carolina to where you could sell alcohol at stadiums, nobody in her department like knew exactly like how that would work, what the pricing looked like, and all that stuff because they had only worked in college athletics. So they called on her, even though she had just started, and so like she told them the prices and like stuff that works and stuff that doesn't. So like that kind of stuff really helped her and like brought her up to like another level of respect because she like understood that kind of thing that's newer to some people. So yeah, doing sales jobs, get your foot in the door, but I kind of lost my train of thought there. But yeah, it's just making sure that you're just not you don't get too discouraged about like where you're going. Like you're not going to be wasting your time if you go take that job somewhere else. You can always come back to it. You're going to be gaining experience and becoming more mature and getting to know more people. So you might have to delay that sports career, but you'll be all right.
Yeah, I kind of want to piggyback off that, but because I was going to say that, but it's also I feel like with that you should always stay passionate about what you want to do, despite the journey you may have to take to get to that point. Because nothing is ever going to come easy. You aren't just going to be like apply and then get it, or have the plan that you set out go exactly the way you want it, unless you're just realistic about those kind of situations. But you should always be passionate about something that you're doing. So if you want to work in sports or even just anything, you have to have that mindset and have that just faith that whatever you get yourself into is gonna like be positive and is gonna take you forward to what your dreams are, whatever your dreams hold, or even if you don't have like a dream per se, you just want to be somewhere in sports or somewhere in whatever industry you're in. You have to have faith that whatever you do or whatever you put your mind to is going to get you there in the long run.
I was gonna say kind of what everybody else has been saying, having open dialogue to letting them know it's gonna be tough. It's a what's the word she used? Oversaturated market, oversaturated industry. But if you're passionate about what you want to do and what the career that you want to chase, go for it because ultimately the end goal in working in a lifetime in your career is to have a job that you love working at. You want to love what you do. So it's like if you're not fulfilled by these other jobs, it's cool for now to be somewhere where you're not okay with being at because you're gonna those skills they translate. So like sales, you can do sales anywhere, but those skills will translate into the sports industry if that's what your end goal is to get into. So just keeping a positive mindset, having that open dialogue, and just knowing that those skills will translate.
I would kind of second what Haley said about keeping your passion for it. Remember why we even wanted to come down this path to begin with. Because I feel like if you give up on your dreams, you'll be a lot more miserable in that other space or other job that you chose to be in rather than doing the work to get where you want to be. So I think as like people that are currently in the field, I think the best thing we can do is, even though this goes against everything I just said, I think it's our job to market the sexiness of the job. Like, I think it's important to show, like, even though we did a lot of work to get here, it is still fun at the end of the day. It does still have benefits at the end of the day. It's still cool. Like, so yeah, and I think encouraging people to just never give up. And I feel like that's really cliche. It is. It's terrible to say that. However, it's true. You know, I counted my rejection letters from last year. Like my first school year, I'm pretty sure I'm like in the 50s. But all it took was that one yes. So those rejection letters don't even matter anymore.
Just understanding, like we mentioned, and probably sounding like a broken record what we talked about, just trying to accept rejection for what it is. But I think when you come to a point where you do get that one yes, you start to become, like motivated by it because because that's all it takes. I mean, you could have like 100 different offers on the table, but you only have to pick one, especially when you're working in an industry like this. But when you have that one offer, you always try to do everything you can to make sure that's the right one. But it's also you also have to remind yourself that, you know, even though you may want to work here, maybe that might not be the right place for you. Like not only do you want to work somewhere that's going to hire you, you also want to be somewhere where they respect you and where you're wanted. And I think that's something that, does come later on, like in a realization when you do start working. Because, yeah, say like maybe you do want to work for a team like the Cowboys, but maybe the Cowboys may not be the right place for you because, maybe there's people in that organization that think a little bit differently, or they think, that something that you see as important maybe not be as important to them, from an organization perspective. And I just think, like when it comes to trying to encourage the next generation coming up, because that's the whole purpose of the Off Field Players podcast and why I wanted to put this series together is because when like the one thing and it all kind of comes full circle when we talk about mentorship, when we talk about, separating yourself from, the different applicants in the application pool. Like when it comes full circle is that, it's just all about trying to, inspire. And I think that's something that we do as interns, like outside from the podcast, that we're inspiring people to get into NASCAR and we're inspiring them to know that there is diversity, initiatives happening in our sport. Historically it may have not always been like that, but knowing what the internship has been doing for the past 22 years, for as long as that's been around, we are like, the face of, the NDIP with our class in specific. And when people see it, and when people become more aware of it, that's when people like will garner the interest of wanting to be a part of strengthening the program. And that's what, this series is trying to accomplish, or at least that's what I hope that this series accomplishes with trying to make sure that we not only inspire the next generation to want to work in the sports industry, but also inspire the importance of what this program has given to us as far as the opportunity to like know what the sports industry is like, or to understand the initiative being put behind seeing people that look like us become a part of like a sport like NASCAR, or really just in the sports industry all across the board. So with that being said, I kind of, want to go into now the fun part about, what we've been doing over the summer. So just, go around, like just describe a little bit more about what you have done during your time in NASCAR and what has been your favorite moment, or what has been something that you've enjoyed so far just being in the department that you're in.
I guess I'm starting off again.
I mean,
For
I
me,
can go if
so
you want me to.
no, I'm joking. It's fine. It's fine. I'm sorry. But I would say for me, I would say I really enjoyed. So I'm working with the Chicago Street Race team this summer. So I was a part of the first ever street race that happened. Um, and so like my title is marketing and partnerships, but I've been pretty vertical, I would say, across the board. So that's been really cool. So some of the big things that I did this summer was like just help to put like the just organize the race sheet. So like all the events that are happening for like the race weekend. So that whole week I did the specific race days. So like July 1st and 2nd, I put that together. So that was like, I was working with like the operations team to do that. Helped to put together Bubba's block party and helped to pick the artists. So we landed on Lupe Fiasco. So just those are like some really big highlights, and just like being able to be at the race, being trackside. So it's been a really cool summer, but it's been a lot of work, right? Doing something that's never been done before. Like they've been building all the time. So it's just been different, but I think it's just like realizing what's important, but also like learning the importance of delayed gratification, where it might not feel good now, but we know it's going to be great in the end.
Well, I've been doing this summer as a brand activation intern. I would say my company is very, I don't want to say chaotic, but they have a lot going on with like not a lot of staff. So it's a lot of people taking on like 2 and 3 something roles. But what I've been doing is partly like creating stuff for them for hospitality reasons and just things that help get their name out there that isn't like super traditional marketing, as well as like some event handling stuff. Like right now, I'm looking for a photo booth vendor for the Richmond 250 race that like we've been planning all summer. And that's been something different for me because I've never done that for such a large event before, but it's coming real easy. But I haven't been very like super in the field until like the next 2 weeks, where they're gonna have me in Pocono and in Richmond, like handling those races. So I'm very excited to see how well I adapt to those environments and just having the experience to be out there.
No. I think for me, like I've been having a lot of fun with my team, like partnership marketing. That whole group is a lot of fun. Like there's a lot of different age ranges in the partnership marketing department. So getting to know them has been a lot of fun. I've been helping them organize their stuff so they can make sure they're informing our sponsors like of what's going on. And I really helped out a lot with the Chicago street race. Like that was big thing, and it was so new that like they needed to make sure they had the information on hand. So I helped make information packets for them and make sure they were ready to go. And whenever I tell you, I swear it was like 1,000 sheets of paper in each of these little packets for the partnership marketing group. I don't know how they even got through it and organized it, but they said it really helped. So I was super happy and excited that something that I did help them out. Also, the sim racing stuff is a lot of fun. I've been hanging out in the gaming room with Oscar. That's been fun, and really just being in Charlotte is a lot of fun, and being in the city, just because I'm from a small town. So yeah.
With driver and team marketing, I've been doing a lot of stat book kind of keeping. So some of the projects I've been working on with them, with Nicole Cruz specifically, she has me working on the driver dashboards that we go and update every week after a race. And some of the things that we have on those dashboards include like the career wins, the career top fives, career polls, social media following. If at this point I know every Cup Series driver's social media handle from Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. It's been a grind, and I appreciate just kind of giving me insight into what the corporate sports world looks like. But the driver dashboards today, I actually hosted some high school kids that are in the Charlotte Sports Biz camps, and so I'm in the fellowship for the college students, and these are high school kids in Charlotte. I'm from Charlotte, so it's just kind of looking at a younger version of myself in the mirror, and it was cool to give back to the kids. Hey, this is how I got to the position I am today, and this is how you can get here where I'm at. And so that was a cool experience today that I actually got to, I guess, a little side project. And they actually had me flying out to the Richmond race at the end of the month. And that'll be my first time, other than the Coke 600 when, orientation, we got rained out. But it'll be my first time really engaged into race weekend and seeing how the whole operation moves. And operations has kind of been the field that I think I see myself getting into. Doesn't matter the sport, just I know operations has kind of been my niche. But it'll be exciting at the end of the month to go to Richmond and really be entrenched into the NASCAR season.
I think my favorite part about being in this program here at NASCAR is the people in general. It's kind of cheesy, but it's true. Not just my team, but like the interns, just even if I'm hanging out in the break room, like somebody from a completely different team is just going to come up to me and talk to me just because, like, I feel like at least the Charlotte office is a very friendly experience.
Never here.
Going back to my team, I feel like they embraced me. Uh, like, I don't know. I've just never worked with a team that's so collaborative, that's so, outgoing, but yet everybody is so different. And I think it just makes the work more fun to do. And I think the best thing about being on my team as well is like, they don't just give me, well, I feel like I'm not just treated like an intern. Like, I feel like I'm actually doing work that's, important, something that's actually going to, still last at the company well after my internship ends. Like, I feel like I actually do play a part in the team. So I think that's probably one of the coolest things. And just Charlotte in general as a city, super cool. Especially me being from New York. Like, I feel like I was like anti southern cities for a very long time in my life. But I feel like I have a lot of fun here. So it's cool.
You need to get out of here with that. The South is where it's at. That's why everybody's moving down here. Let's go.
Talk to him.
That's
Talk
only
to him.
because of the cheaper.
Because the what? The what? Huh?
It's only the cost of living. That's about it.
Yeah, like in DeNashia, I want to point out a few things that you said there. Aside from that respect for southern cities. I mean, hey, like I love Charlotte. Charlotte's a very great place there. Like I'm not there now. Like I'm in Daytona Beach, as everybody knows. But and just I think that's the great part about being in this program is that we're all coming from different places. Some of us may be local, some of us probably come from we probably grew up in big cities or small towns or even probably some of us came from overseas. And we have like a few overseas interns that are in the program as well that they're like international students at their respective colleges. But and I want to point out that something that DeNashia said, talking about how the work that she's been doing is contributing to the legacy of that department that she's in, and how what she's contributing how she's contributing to her department this summer is going to carry on going forward, like once she's done, like whether that's if she decides to come back to NASCAR or work full time or not. And I think that's the one thing that we're being given the opportunity to do as interns. I know one thing that's mentioned for our program in particular is that everybody has been assigned a case study. For like we're doing group projects together. Like, well, all of us will be put together randomly in a group, and we'll be assigned a case study to find a way to help and get more young people into NASCAR, even more people of color to become interested in the sport, whichever that assignment is. And even with our departments, I'll speak on behalf of myself for a minute. Working with the weekly series operations team, where I'm contributing to the department that focuses on the grassroots initiative that's within NASCAR. So, this is coming from the platforms of, say, NASCAR Roots, where, you go on the NASCAR website, you could pull up the Roots series, and you can see it comes from a variety of like the Arkham Menard series, the Whelen Modified Tour, or like my department, like we focus on the NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Weekly series, where it's mostly grassroots racing, where we're overseeing tracks all over the country and even a few up in Canada. So where we're just trying, like my responsibilities have been just trying to do research on how they're promoting themselves through their track websites, social media, their collaboration with the entitlement sponsor for the series, Advanced Auto Parts, and just seeing what ways can we help them grow or continue to grow their platform as these tracks in small towns that are more community based and not so much the big tracks that you see on television every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. These are more tracks that operate on a weekly basis. They put on racing every weekend, or every or bi-weekly in these small towns, and understanding, well, like for me to understand that for a lot of where these tracks are, like dispersed around the country, and like I mentioned, up in Canada, across the border to the north, these are the only forms of entertainment that most of these towns have. Like as far as sports entertainment is concerned, like some of these people that go to these tracks may not have access to go watch like a minor league baseball team that's maybe like in 5 towns over, or like even the next state over, or they don't have the luxury of going to watch a professional sports team where they're from. Maybe the closest thing that they have when it comes to like ball and stick sports, maybe probably like the local high school or the local college, like in that town. But when it comes to the racetrack that they have access to, there's a lot of there's like a charm to it, to where you know, this is the only, like, people can say that, oh yeah, like we're like how I spend my Friday nights. I like to go to the racetrack, or how I like to, like what I do for my kids, to introduce them to some form of sports, or even the form of racing, is I like to take them to the racetrack on Saturday nights. And and I feel like there's a beauty and that's just like that initiative that NASCAR has been able to provide for a lot of these like local racetracks, and for me to be able to experience it and to be able to contribute to like the initiative that's been put into place by the weekly racing operations team. Like, I'm hoping that the ideas that come up with, and that the work that I'm putting in, can be carried on like further on. If if my path is different, like in the future, where if I don't work with NASCAR, or if I end up working with a sports organization, and this is for everybody else as well. Well, when I say this, at least we can say, or like when we have an opportunity to go back and maybe see like a former supervisors or something like that, or at least we can say that we played a role as interns in trying to make sure that we continue to grow the department, or grow the legacy of anything that's in particular when it came to the work that we put in, and trying to help grow the sport for the future. And that's a benefit that a lot of us should find appreciation in, when it comes to what we'll learn, or what we'll reflect on once the internship is over. Is that hey, we put in the work, we put in the time, we contributed to any aspect that was called upon for us as far as the tasks are concerned, and at the end of the day, like, we can all say that we played a role in it. And I think that's the one thing that we should see value in when it comes to interning, and doing what we're doing currently. So I want this to, like be a question for everybody to, give the best answer to, because knowing that we're in a program that's diversity focused, and especially in a sport like NASCAR, with us being in a diversity internship program, how do we encourage people of color to become more aware about the opportunities to intern with a sport like NASCAR?
I think we've kind of been saying it a lot, so go ahead and repeat it. If any opportunity that you can have to get your foot into the door into the sports industry, please take it. Because if you, like I said, if you're passionate and you know that's the path that you want to take, it doesn't matter the sport. Like again, for myself, I've always told myself I want to work in the NFL, but I've worked minor league baseball, I've worked hockey, minor league hockey, I've worked with rec league kids. Like, you just have to find your way, network, get to know people, build those relationships, because eventually you'll get to where you want to get to. And like I said, I've been blessed to be a part of this internship here at NASCAR, because it's a lot of just unknown going into it. It's the stereotypes and the things that you hear about it on the outside looking in. It's just, until you're in it, you don't really get it. So it's never shy away from opportunity to get your foot into the door in the sports industry, and continue to preach that to the younger generation and to people that just are passionate about sports and want to get into the industry.
Me just saying that I have an internship with NASCAR has like really opened people's eyes. Like, the people I'm staying with, it's a African American couple, and like the fact that I was just in NASCAR like brought them like interest. Like, and I told them there's a Chicago street race, and they're like, oh shoot, I'm gonna watch that. Like, that's really cool, and like that kind of has like opened their eyes to like NASCAR is like a legit like thing. Like, it's not just all the stereotypes. And sure, like there's that element of the fan and whatever, but I feel like NASCAR, like the entity of NASCAR itself, is not like that, based off what I've seen in the past month and a half now. So that's been really cool to see, and really just like talking to people about it. Like, really, NASCAR, like what? And I'm like, no, it's actually like a lot of fun, and like everybody's super professional and all that stuff. And I think it's a little bit less stuffy than the NFL. Like if you work for them, they're always like, oh, like it's a privilege to be there, and everybody wants to be us. And sure, like there's some truth to that, like 100%, like an amazing league. But I think like NASCAR like really appreciates the people that work for NASCAR. It's not like, oh, like you're lucky to be here, like, which is kind of annoying. But yeah, just us being here and like us saying that we're NASCAR interns, I think that's been bringing a lot of people's like opening a lot of people's eyes and kind of like bring them to the sport a little bit.
Yeah, I think for sure what Lauryn said. I've had a lot of people DM me like, "Oh, I didn't know like we were into NASCAR." I was like, "Yeah, it's just not very popular." But I think that also begs the question like, is NASCAR marketing to and letting people know that they have a diversity program? Because I didn't know that they had one. I literally saw it on LinkedIn because somebody reposted it, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna apply." But like, and I was just talking to Eric Ryan about this. Like, how do we market? How do we promote ourselves? How do we let people know, especially down south, since there aren't many tracks down here, that NASCAR is diverse and that they're not the kind of stuffy white folks only sporting league that they can also participate in, and not even just driving, but like behind the scenes in corporate, on track stuff like that. I think but besides us, like promoting it by saying like, "Hey, I have an internship with NASCAR," or like them doing it how they do it. It also has to be like more hands on, I would say.
I feel like you guys hit it perfectly on the head. I would say one thing that we could just increase is just community engagement, so just making sure sometimes if you want to wear the gear that you have or just telling people about your experience, I think that makes the world of a difference. Because I know just being up here in Chicago, like there's not a lot of legal street racing, I should say, but just in terms of, different things that happen. So I remember just walking around downtown because our office is here. People are like, "Oh, you work for NASCAR," and different things. So just being able to willing to talk to people and like break down a lot of the stigma that surrounds the sport currently, and just letting people know my experience, because everyone's experience is going to be different. So I think that's definitely where we start.
Lauryn will tell you I post 24/7, 365. So like just me constantly being on social media, like people are now aware of NASCAR, at least like the few thousands of people that follow me. Like maybe 2 or 3 months ago, my best friend could not tell you who Bubba Wallace is. But now, on Sundays, she's texting me talking about, "Oh, I just seen the race on TV." So like just having that kind of minor exposure just in my immediate circle, and even knowing that like people online are watching me, and they're like, I've had people, they're technically not my classmates, but people I go to school with text me and ask me like, "Oh, how's NASCAR?" And I don't even speak to these people. Like, I'm like, how did you even find this out? So like, I think that kind of visibility online, it spreads the word very fast. Spreads the interest very fast. Just them seeing a Black woman in NASCAR, they're like, wow. But then also for me specifically, knowing that, on my team, my direct manager, who's senior assistant general counsel, is a Black woman, but also general counsel of NASCAR as a whole is also a Black woman. Like that is unheard of, like literally, especially like in the legal field. Black women make up 1.7% of all attorneys. So knowing that, NASCAR has the reputation that it has, or like, the negative stereotype, and then you look at the legal team and it's full of like intelligent Black women. Chef's kiss. Like, I love it here.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's chef's kiss indeed to that.
I also think that what DeNashia said about her posting about like Bubba Wallace and all that, and that her friend knows it. I also think it's a good idea to like have faces of NASCAR that people can relate to, or that are even like personable in some form. Like, I hate to bring NFL up again, but like they're just the people to go to for examples. But like they have players in every team that people relate to. Like, that's my favorite player, or I like what he do, or they've seen him like play and they're impressed by what he can do, like skill wise. So I think it would be such a blessing for NASCAR to have um, drivers that are more like vocal on social media and put a face to the actual brand like of NASCAR instead of just their like respective teams or garages.
Yeah, absolutely. And and I even say this, for myself, like when I got here to Daytona, yeah, I was like in a way I was a little bit shocked that there was a majority of black people that worked on the corporate side of NASCAR. I mean, I always knew that like we would see like black people that were in NASCAR, like they were on the pit crews or maybe they were like race officials or like, but seeing how many people are on the corporate side, I mean, it's incredible just to know that there is representation within the sport altogether. And I know because I know growing up, like I mentioned, I watched NASCAR since I was 3 years old. But and I went to my first race first race in the national series when I was 7, Isle Club Speedway in Fontana, California. And and even though like we're still kind of picking up on it, I guess like when you're like a little kid and you're like you're just going to the races, like you don't really pay much attention to the representation that's on the track. You know what I mean? You don't know if like when I was 7 years, I didn't really worry about if there was like a black driver or if there were like black people working on the pit crews or anything like that. Because when you're 7 years old, all you really just think about is your love for the sport. But I think as when you get older, when you start to become more aware of like the social injustice that happens like in the world and things like that, and just the racial disparities that there are, and like sports or really just in the corporate world in general, you kind of it's kind of like you kind of get hit with that reality check, like, oh my gosh, like, oh, it's up to me to make sure that the response, like the representation, is displayed, and that we help carry the torch in any way that we can to make sure that people are aware of about NASCAR, that become NASCAR curious, which is something that's been said a lot in our lunch and learns when it comes to the diversity initiative. And yeah, and I feel like it's very important that we have, that we keep a program like this, or that NASCAR can keep the diversity internship program going, and that this podcast series can help bring or help bridge that gap between people becoming, unaware of NASCAR to people becoming more like appreciative and more aware of NASCAR as a sport as a whole. But yeah, like I mean, thank you guys for so much for just emphasizing that and just being able to express the passion that you now have for NASCAR, like being on the ground level of working within the sport and contributing to the legacy for it. I mean, yeah, again, I'm gonna give you guys a round of applause for that, pat on the back, do everything with that in that regard. But I feel like that's gonna be a good way to wrap up this episode of the NASCAR Diversity Series for the Off Field Players podcast. I want to say thank you so much to Lauryn, Carlton, Gift Pendleton, DeNashia Robinson, Haley King, and Elijah Patterson for joining me and being a part of episode number 3 of this podcast series. And I want to appreciate everybody that listened to the end if you did. And also, just making sure that you keep up with the podcast series. I have a few more groups coming up, and even a few more exclusives that I'm planning on doing as I continue to add content for this series in particular, and just finishing out the last few weeks of summer that I have with NASCAR, and that we have while interning with NASCAR. And in order for you to be able to keep up with the podcast series, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this episode with anybody that you know that's interested in wanting to work in the sports industry, or even interested in wanting to learn more about the diversity internship program that NASCAR has to offer. Of like, make sure that they're prepared to apply for next year's class, if they're eligible to do so. And yeah, and please do that if you watch the video version of this episode, or if you, listen to the audio version on Spotify, Anchor, iHeartRadio. Please make sure to look out for the episodes that are soon to come. But anyway, I just want to say thank you again for the interns that I've had on tonight. And yeah, expect this episode to come up, and make sure to be on the lookout for episode number 4 of the NASCAR Diversity Series for the Off Field Players podcast. So with that being said, I want to wish everybody a good night, have a good weekend, stay safe, stay blessed, stay motivated. And as always, make sure to achieve what you believe.